Information in this podcast is of general nature only. It does not take into account your personal needs or objectives. Before investing in any product, you need to consider your personal situation, needs and objectives. Always seek professional advice for your particular circumstances and needs prior to investing.
Hi David, how are you?
Loz, I'm really well this morning. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you again.
You too.
So quick intro on myself. I'm Lauren Ivani. I'm working with Disability Housing Solutions as their Chief Relationship Officer. And what I'm bringing to that is 7 or 8 years in the SDA market, providing education, vacancy management, and a real oversight into the tenancy process and investor process of getting into the SDA market. So we've placed hundreds of tenants, we've done hundreds of SDA applications, and we've seen the ups and downs the investment market has provided, the good, the bad and the ugly. And what we're here to do is really share that information with the industry so that we can together improve and help spread the good word, and really get people to understand what the SDA market is so they can make good decisions, great investments. Tenants can really find, how they can use this to their advantage and really live a really great life. So that's who I am, and I'm excited to try and share some experience that might help anybody come into the SDA market and be part of it.
Very powerful stuff. A lot of experience. So my name's David Essler. The reason I'm here and what I'm doing with Disability Housing Solutions, I've been around disability housing from the very, very start of the inception of the NDIS. And I was talking with policy writers and legislation writers in Canberra in the very early days, trying to make it more suitable and less risky for investors. I'm here with a strong background in property development, marketing, disability construction, and together with Lauren, we're out here, like Lauren said, just to share some information. We've seen it all. We've seen the pitfalls. We've seen the wins, the successes, the losses, the tragedies, and the triumphs across this whole industry. And we want to, like Lauren said, give you some of this information to help support your journey, whether you're an investor, an owner, a participant, a SIL provider, a COS, whatever stakeholder part you are in this process, this is for you. So today, we've had a couple of episodes, and today we really want to look at what's it like for a tenant, for a participant, when they're looking for a specialist disability accommodation home. They've got an SDA in their plan, fantastic. They've got their support networks, they've got family and a team around them, fantastic. Right, they're now looking for a property. What are they looking for? And as an investor, you should be dialing in here if you're looking to purchase an SDA property and it's something that doesn't meet a lot of these criteria. It's unlikely you'll meet every single box tick, right? It's unlikely. Yeah. If you don't meet a lot of them, you're probably in trouble, right? So pay attention as you're an investor. If you're a SIL provider, this is the kind of stuff your tenants are looking for. For participants, this is the kind of thing a really quality SDA provider or developer or builder should be giving to you, right? So let's jump. Did I miss anything there, Loz?
No, it's really good. And I think I'd just like to point out, I think we did a topic on this a couple of weeks back, which was what to do as an investor. So this is sort of like flipping that conversation and just bringing it back to the participant's perspective. Yeah. So really putting yourself in their shoes. And thinking as though, if this were me, would I take this rental? Would I want to move in 12 months if something better came up?
Great question to ask. What a great question to ask yourself.
Yeah. So this is why we wanted to just flip that perspective and just go through it as though you were a tenant. So we've made a couple of points here. So I'm going to just go through them all. We'll hash them out a little. So I think one of the biggest things, and we're 8 years in to the SDA market going live, and a lot's changed in that market already. Early on, there was not a lot of development and it was slow. And so there was a very small amount of supply
It was,
on the
wasn't it? It
market.
was so slow in the early days. It's like
It
you
was
couldn't,
so
banks,
slow.
banks didn't understand it. No one understood it.
No,
Couldn't get anything
it's
done.
hard to get funding for it,
Yeah,
and hard to get a builder to know how to build it, and then an
yeah,
SDA certified to work with a
yeah,
builder that actually got a good product out. So
yeah.
it was very complex, it was very slow and clunky, and that meant that there was not a lot of supply available for tenants. And so investors really had, the ball in their court in terms of, if people didn't have a lot to choose from, then they would choose properties that perhaps today would look subpar. So that demand supply really didn't give tenants a whole lot of choice and control. But if you're looking at this as a 20-year strategy, which you should be, because that's how long the SDA funding will last for from the date of your property's enrolment, you should really be looking at a regular property investment strategy whereby you're putting your property in a position and having those value adds that is going to continue getting tenants to choose your property even when the demand and the supply balances out, which 8 years on, it is starting to do in a lot of areas. Some areas it's flipped and all of the supply has been chewed up, and so the demand's right back there and it's very high and there's not much available. But in other areas, it's oversupplied and there's no demand because they've built things that perhaps tenants don't want or need.
That's right.
So always looking at that choice and control or that supply and demand, I guess, over the long term, and what would make a tenant prefer your property. They're the key things I want to unpack.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So, what do you think leads a participant, right? So again, they if they don't like a place, they can say, I don't like it. And if there's something else available around the corner, they can move freely, right? Which is as it should be. So what's
Mm.
something that'll impact that decision for the participant there? What do you think?
Look, I find that participants that require certain personalised modifications to their property are always going to want to stay if they're able to make those modifications and get a long lease.
Mhm.
That's something that I think owners really need to be aware of, that even though it's built to SDA standards, sometimes modifications need to be made to allow that person to live safely. So always be open to those conversations. Your support coordinator and your SDA provider will work through who's responsible for funding that. It may be the tenant, it may be the NDIS, it may be something that you consider offering. I always, and this is the biggest part of our discussion, but let's just jump straight into it. So it's location.
Yeah.
So again, if I were to be in somebody's shoes and I was looking for an SDA for myself and my family for whatever reason, my biggest thing is going to be, well, I currently live on the Gold Coast. I have kids that go to school at X school. I work here. I do most of my shopping, medical appointments, all that stuff within a 10-kilometre radius. I need to
Yep.
be in that area or I'm going to
So
have to
I'm not going to live in
unplug.
Yarrabilba, for example.
No. So your location is key. And I think a lot of people that are getting into SDA investment are buying interstate. And so that can be really hard to gauge,
Yep.
especially when you look at Google Maps and you think, oh, there's a bit of development in that area on the satellite image. I feel like it's going to be okay. But unless you're getting some local knowledge and some sort of feelers out there from somebody who knows the area, you might be misinterpreting what that area is actually like. And quite often those greenfield developments really do feel quite isolated, and they don't offer the facilities and conveniences of a brownfield investment site that has got those built up conveniences that we all search for when we're looking for a rental.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a good point. Location, you talk about greenfield and brownfield, right? And for the uninitiated, it just means a greenfield is if you've ever been driving down like a highway and all of a sudden you come across in the middle of nowhere, a suburb just appears and it's just houses. There's
Yeah.
no shops, there's no taverns, there's no malls, it's just a whole bunch of houses in a paddock. That's a greenfield development. So the infrastructure hasn't caught up to the houses yet. And it could take years and years and years. And a brownfield is it's an established area. You might have like a 12 or 15 acres in suburbia that's come up and someone's decided to sell the family hobby farm and a developer buys it and it's already surrounded by schools and churches and
Yeah.
shops and taverns
Yeah.
and that's a brownfield, right?
Yeah.
They're very different animals. Um,
They are.
what I've noticed is a lot of these greenfield sites, they're bought by big development companies, and then they do, and some of them are really well done, but they are further out. The infrastructure hasn't caught up, and I've
Yeah.
noticed a lot of the time they the way things are moving these days is a higher density kind of residential development. So the blocks are
Mm.
smaller and the roads are narrower. Parking's
Yeah.
far more limited. So
Yeah.
if your frontage of a block is only 10 or 15 meters,
Yeah.
once you put a driveway in, you've got space for sort of one more car out the front of the property. And the roads are often very narrow in these things, to
Yeah.
the point where sometimes council garbage trucks can't even get down
I
if there's
know.
cars parked on the street. Happens
Yeah.
more often than you'd think. So
Yeah.
if you're being sold a property in a greenfield site, you want to look at things like, okay, how wide's the street? How
Mm.
long's the frontage?
Hmm.
Because an STA home, it needs lots of parking, and that's another
Yeah.
thing from a participant's perspective. Is there lots of parking? So there's likely a vehicle that belongs to or is servicing the participants of that home, the residents of the
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
and then all day long there's support services coming and going.
Yeah.
There's maintenance people coming and going. If you can only have one car in the garage and one on the street, it's likely that you're going to be in front of neighbours' houses or have to park around the corner,
Mm.
or it just
Yeah.
makes it much more difficult for that person to live in that home,
It
and the
does.
supports to then look after them.
Yeah, yeah, it really can. And those sort of crowded new estates where we're not seeing blocks of land up around 600 meters squared, we're seeing blocks of land around 350. And so it really means that your whole block is all house.
Yeah,
And there's very little room there for a backyard or parking.
yeah,
And look, parking is a big thing. You know, you need to have a reasonable sized garage where you can fit a disability access or modified vehicle in there, because that's quite often the case. And you do need off-street parking for staff. Like if there isn't that, what it is a barrier to that tenant coming in, something that they will consider as difficult or not suitable. And so this is why, put yourself in their shoes. If their staff are going to have to park 500 meters down the road every day because that street is always so full with your neighbouring cars and there's no
yeah,
extra car spaces, it's going to be a bit frustrating eventually. Or if you're in an area that's paid parking on the street, and it's 2-hour paid parking on the street, you're going to have a real problem with your support workers being able to go down every 2 hours and move their car, because if you can't be left alone, then you're going to have two people on or use a concierge service to back you up in those gaps. So little things like parking can make a huge impact on
yeah.
someone with a disability. Your road crossings, while we're out on the street talking about how it looks, your road crossings are often a big hurdle, and it's something that perhaps somebody who's physically able doesn't consider too much, because walking across a road, myself might be something that I can navigate fairly easily. But if I'm in a wheelchair and I've got my child with me, I really want to make sure I've got a safe road crossing to get
Yep.
to the oval across the road, or to walk down to Aldi or whatever it may be. And that safe road crossing often is in the wrong direction, a kilometre down the way. And so
That's
they've
right.
got to go a kilometre the wrong direction, cross the road safely, and then a kilometre back to get to where they need to get to.
That's
And
right.
we've seen time and time again really great developments in a really great suburb in a brownfield site, and there's no crossing, and it's a huge busy road, and the only crossing available to them is in the wrong direction down a very steep slope. Oh,
Yep.
it's a bit tricky to say this morning. And that can be really problematic. And in that particular case, as an example, we had 4 tenants that were approved, very suitable for the property, loved the location, but could not access the shops directly across the road because of
Yeah.
the slope to cross the road, and then that the crossing was further down. And so by the time they had gone down the hill to the crossing and then had to come back up to the hill, they would have been completely fatigued.
It's a really
So
good point. So it's, if you're sitting in Melbourne or Perth, and someone presents you this opportunity in the Sunshine Coast, right?
mm,
And you look at, oh, there's the apartment block and there's the shops. It's just across the road. That's fantastic. Great location. But it's
mm,
this kind of it's this kind of detail. You know, you want to either fly up or fly over and look at the land yourself, or get on the Google Maps, the street view, and look at it. And go, well, there's no crossing. So
Yeah,
we've just determined crossings are really, really important.
they are.
Locations, really, really important. The size of the block, street frontage, parking, really, really important. You touched
Pathway
very
access.
quickly on a backyard,
Yeah,
and one of the things, you know, if you consider that, and I was just interrupted a second ago by my little puppy, right?
sorry,
You,
he's
you,
very
you want to
cute.
have a pet, right? If you've got a pet and you've got no backyard, then it's again, you mentioned the word barrier to entry. It's a barrier to entry.
Yeah,
If you're confined to your home most of the time and you want to have some engagement with, but the pets become really, really important. And
they
if there's
do.
nowhere for them to go, then it's an absolute barrier to entry for a person wanting to take that property on. So
Yeah,
there's a few things there.
yeah.
Um, and then we've got some other notes we sort of come up with, Lauren, before. Talk a little bit about the direction of which way the property faces.
Okay, and this is a one that I think even I don't remember to consider all the time, but I have come up against it multiple times, and it's been frustrating. So this is more in like an apartment style complex, or where there's perhaps only one main bedroom for a participant to specifically utilize, and where that bedroom has been facing west. Now, I live in Queensland. I'm from Canberra originally, so know that cold, horrible weather. But also living in Queensland, and this is from south all the way north, and it only gets hotter as you go up. If you've got a bedroom that faces west and has got a nice big beautiful window, it's lovely in the morning and absolutely horrendous from about 12 o'clock on. And what that means, and what we've seen time and time again, is a huge increase in that participant's electricity bill, because they may spend a fair bit of time in their bedroom. And if that bedroom overheats very quickly and block out blinds just don't quite cut it. And I mean, I've had a west facing bedroom for years, and you can feel the heat about a
Yeah,
meter off it
it
from the
radiates off
afternoon.
the blind.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's disgusting. So, having a look at the floor plan of a property before you lock something in. If the main bedroom is west facing and you're buying in Queensland, have a think about how perhaps that could be flipped to avoid that
Explain why that's
difficulty.
important, more important than for someone like you and I.
Okay, so in particular in the HPS category, but this would apply all the way down through the design standards. Quite often, temperature control for their body is not working as well as it might you or I.
Yeah.
And so there has to be temperature control systems, so air conditioning available to them. And if they've got a specifically hot bedroom and they're on a pension, and their electricity bill is high because they're having to use the aircon all the time to cool that bedroom, they're going to start looking for alternatives. And the alternatives that we've seen people deploy, apart from blockout blinds, is the heat reflective foil stuff on the window.
Yeah.
And what that does is create a blacked out, isolated bedroom where they can't see outside and enjoy the sunlight while
Yeah.
staying cool, because they've had to block it out to make sure that their body can regulate their temperature better. So it really does have this flow-on effect that for you or I, we might go, well, I have the ability to pay that electricity bill, so I'm just going to cop it because there's nothing else I can do about it. But for somebody else that A, their body finds it hard to regulate their temperature, and B, is on a very restricted income, that increase in electricity bill is just unmanageable. So they end up doing things to manage that risk differently, and it has a negative impact on their health.
So the consequences might be, if it's a bedroom facing west and it's a person who can't body regulate their own temperature, they'll either be looking for somewhere else to live, right,
Yeah,
which doesn't suit,
which has
if you're an
happened.
investor, that's bad news. Or they
Mm-hmm.
do things like line the windows with foil, which then lowers their quality of life, which is a bad result for the participant. So again, something
and
to look out for.
and you often get neighbours thinking that there's something else going on in there.
Some
So
sort of
it
row
can
house, yeah.
yeah, it can look a little suspect from the outside too. Which I mean, at the end of the day, who cares if it needs to be there? It needs to be there, but it is just something to consider.
All right, and just quickly, just before we wrap up, a couple of last points. Again, particularly in the fully accessible and high physical support categories, Participants will come with a lot of equipment, or they
Mm.
can come with a lot of equipment. So space for that, and also space for visitors, for family or a partner or guests, is really
Yeah.
important. So if you're again, if you're an investor, so there's an investor and a participant kind of conversation. Participants are looking for space for the different kinds of wheelchairs they might have, space for the
Mm.
different kinds of equipment that supports their, in some cases, their life, or
Mhm.
supports their mobility and lifestyle. They're
Mm.
looking for a space where they can have people come over, like you or I would,
Yeah.
to stay the night, to stay a week, to have a holiday, to visit, if they've got their own kids. So a lot of different kind of conversations going into what's important for participants. Now,
Yeah.
again, just rewinding a second back to the location thing. Um, for participants who are mostly wheelchair bound, it's a bit of a mission to get out of the house sometimes. They need support to get out of the house. And when they are, you spoke about crossings and footpaths and things like that.
Mm.
They want to be near places like, imagine just you're on the way home from work, you pop into the shops, you get a bottle of wine, you go to Coles, you do whatever you do. You might go to the newsagent and just pick up a card for someone's birthday or a scratchy,
Yeah.
and then you go, oh,
Yeah.
you know what? There's a restaurant. I'll pop in there for dinner, or I'll get some takeout. All the same things that you or I want, but for them
That's
to
right.
do that, to get into a vehicle, it takes a team to support that. Or if they just want to pop out, they can't just walk down to the shop. So you want to be really close. And when I say
Mm.
really close, I'm talking less than a kilometre to
Yeah.
somewhere like a shopping centre, not
Yeah.
an IGA in a wall somewhere,
Yeah.
where there's some fast food or restaurant options, where there's a place to sit and have a beer, where
Yeah.
there's a news agent or a gift shop, and then the supermarket and a
Somewhere to
doctor's
pop
practice.
out outside of the four walls of your own home and
Right.
see people,
Now,
like,
if you're in a greenfield development 30 kilometres from anywhere,
yeah.
regardless of whoever's trying to sell that property to you, regardless of what they say, it's not where participants want to be. And
Yeah.
my evidence, as with my developer hat on, my evidence for that is places like Ripley,
Mm.
Ripley's a suburb in Western Ipswich in Queensland, or Harvey Bay up in the Fraser Coast area.
Mhm.
There's currently a glut, an oversupply of SDA property because
Yeah.
they've been sold to investors. They've not done the DD on where participants want to be and the demand information, and they're
Mm.
sitting there vacant. And we get phone calls literally every week saying, "Can you help me? Can you
Mm.
help me? Can you help me?"
Yeah.
Literally every week.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then the answer's often no, I'm sorry, there's no demand. So
Mm.
participants' perspective, super important. I think that's about 20 minutes long. We keen to keep these things about 20, 25 minutes so they're bite
Yeah.
sized. But
We both know we could talk all day. So
and
I
sometimes we
think
get
I think
passionate.
we've covered a lot of ground though. So key factors: location, road crossings, heat, space for equipment, and a spare room for family, room for pets, because so many of us all have pets these days. We're all Aussies, so we love our animals. And parking. Like, consider those things, and you're going to already make a better decision than if you hadn't thought them through, applied to the property you're looking at.
All right, Loz, thanks. See you next time in about 10 minutes. But for everyone else, next episode, we'll be talking about some investor myths and try and bust some of those. All right, thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Look forward to it. Thanks, Dave.